Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network. And joining me to talk this sad end of the Rockets season is co-host of the Bradeaux Will Show. It's Bradeaux. And man, I just can't believe Steve Kerr catches a break with Gary Payton's illness. So Klay Thompson's reincarnated somehow into Buddy Hield. What are the odds, Bradeaux, that all that happens?
He had the highest true shooting percentage of all time in a game 7. 110 true shooting percentage. He had 9 from 11 from 3, 33 points. It's just Houston's luck when they play Golden State. As everyone knows, 5th loss to Golden State since 2015. Like, can't catch a break. And of course, that's how it ends. It's heartbreaking, of course.
Yeah, and when I saw Payton was out in game 7, I knew it was bad. The Warriors didn't need Payton's defense against the Rockets' inept offense. His shooting was helping the Rockets in a way. So Buddy Hield leads me into Dillon Brooks. And there were a couple of times in the second quarter, Dillon Brooks blew the Hield assignment. He sags off Hield to help Jabari on Butler for no reason. He does a flyby on Hield, leaving him wide open on another occasion. I just hate the flybys, by the way, and the Rockets do that way too often. But Bradeaux, Dillon's defense has become incredibly overrated at this point. He's probably more a value offensively. So I say it's time to either deal Dillon or pull him from the starting lineup. If he's not involved in a superstar trade like Giannis or KD, for example, I would trade him for a better role player. That's been my stance. What do you think?
Yeah, when it comes to Dillon, he was there. I look at Dillon as a whole. The defense isn't as good as it used to be. I do agree with you there. Shooting-wise, yes, he was Houston's best three-point shooter. I want to say around 39.6% this season. Career high attempts as well, 6.3 attempts tonight. That's all handy. So, again, if you're going to make a superstar trade, you got to bring in a shooter. But, ideally, you got to ship out one of Fred, Jalen, Sengun, or Dillon if you want to match salaries for one of those guys. And we know it's not going to be Fred. It looks like they're going to bring him back. Ideally, not shipping out Sengun. So, you down to Jalen and Dillon. So, it depends on what the team wants to do. If you're sticking with role players and improving from there, I could see Dillon being moved. But at the same time, I feel like Houston wants to kind of keep those culture guys in place, like a Fred and a Dillon. And this left me thinking these past few days, or not even these past few days, but since, they got eliminated, what are they going to do this offseason? I've been on this show a few times. We've talked about KD and some other options, and now I'm not quite sure what they do, to be fair with you. They may just run it back, and I don't know how well that would go either. It can't be worse than this year, but again, what's the ceiling of that kind of team? So I personally don't know. But when it comes to Dillon, I wouldn't be upset with him being benched for like a Atari or a Jabari. I thought Jabari should have got way more minutes in those playoff games. Only had 12 in game 7 after he had a great series. So, yeah, I hear you. Minimize role, I wouldn't mind. I'd like to see Tari and guys like Jabari get more minutes.
Right. And I just feel like, if he sticks around and they bench him, I don't know how well that goes over with him. But for me, it's just like, let's send him out. If they don't do a blockbuster trade, he would be the perfect guy to swap somebody else that is a little bit more of an offensive threat, as somebody that can create off the dribble. It's a, much more reliable shooter, as good as he was this year. I don't know if we know that if this is going to be consistent with him moving forward. So it's just all those things. And the IQ stuff is one of the things I've talked about with him, Bradeaux. It's just like, he's a guy that lowers a team's IQ. We have a team that has IQ issues. Udoka even admitted that in the post game. So that's another reason why I'm like, yeah, let's bring somebody else in that's a little bit sharper there and doesn't make that type of mistake.
Yeah, when you brought up the IQ issues, I thought of a number of guys on the team. So it is an issue. And primarily, as everyone knows, when you watch this Houston team, the half-court offense is the issue. They make boneheaded mistakes running in transition. Love a guy like Tari Eason, but it's a guy that comes to mind in that kind of a conversation. But, yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying about Dillon Brooks. I personally do like him, but I can see what you're saying when it comes to, including him in a deal. But, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go over some names potentially in a future show, so keep an eye out for that. It's too much to get into in this one, but in the post game, VanVleet said he wants to come back. The Rockets want VanVleet back. Bradeaux, I know some people are putting his team option of $44 million into a KD deal, but I say, no way. They still need Fred if they dealt for KD, and there's no way the Suns remain relevant if all their money's wrapped up in Booker, Beal, and Fred. I mean, that's 40 or $50 million in 3 guards that, are not going to help you go anywhere next year. Plus, I'm not sure what third team takes back Fred's contract for assets, which help the Suns compete next year. And that's the issue, is like, I just don't see him in a KD deal. I think he's back, and I think the Rockets put him at a smaller number than they have in this team option.
Yeah, with the season ending as of yesterday, the Rockets literally have 5 days to make this decision on Fred's team option of $44.9 million. I do think they declined that, but they're more than likely renegotiating that. It came back in late January that the Rockets were interested on a deal with Fred and extending him. So I doubt any of that has changed, especially after those games he just had with the Rockets. He single-handedly kind of kept them in that series. He was shooting lights out. So, I mean, outside of those 3 games, Fred's been extremely valuable to what the Rockets have done, the past 2 seasons. Inefficient and all outside of those last 3 games. Yes, he had a lot of inefficient stretches. I understand why he frustrates a ton of people, but he still is very beneficial to this young team. And ideally, for me, I would like for him to eventually move to a bench role. I think that would be perfect for him, but the team has to be ready for him to move to a bench role eventually. And again, Robert, that's something else we've talked on this podcast about before. But yeah, when it comes to Fred, he's not being moved. They're going to bring him back, but I do think they renegotiate that to around 30, 35 million, hopefully.
Yeah. Did you see anything in the last couple of months that said that Amen was close to being the point guard next year? Do you see anything that Reed's ready to be the point guard next year? I did.
No, I did not. I did want to see Reed get extended minutes next year. When I say extended, I'm not saying like 25, 30 plus, but at least like playing every night, 20-ish. Because ideally you draft Reed to be the guy eventually over Fred. That's the thought process in my opinion. So I want to see Reed get more time to take over for Fred, because you don't want to be paying a guy like that $35, $40 million when you got a top 3 pick who's extremely talented. Just has to become ready. And as you mentioned, I mean, he's not ready. And Amen Thompson, handle's got to come in still. And I think it will eventually, but it's not all the way there right now. But yeah, so yeah, Fred has to stay for now.
Yeah, when that weird comeback happened a few days ago where Reed and Landale were in the game, it was Reed and Landale I felt like were the problem, because I'm like, no, this is not on Tari Eason and Jabari Smith that were in the game at that point. It's more, Sheppard and Landale defensively just looked like a disaster, and they couldn't do much offensively either. So, I know a lot of people out there, oh, we got to play more Reed. But every time I watch him, I just get scared to death, because defensively, he's terrible. He's terrible. And I don't know if it just magically gets better 3 months in a weight room this summer. I just don't think that's the answer to everything. It's going to take him years to get better defensively to where he's playable in a playoff game. That's what I'm looking at right now.
The one benefit with Reed defensively is he's very handsy, and that goes back to college. High steal rate. He was even getting some blocks, kind of those Fred blocks where you're getting the swipes. But he does have to get better defensively. He looks like a little kid out there at times. As the coaching staff mentioned recently, they thought he was the most, potentially the most offensively gifted player on the team. I don't know how much they actually believe that, but it was stated on the ESPN article. But yeah, the defense has to improve first, especially if you're going to be coached by Ime Udoka. That's obviously his main thing. You got to be able to play defense if you're going to play for me. So, yeah, I hope he can get it together. And I don't know how long it takes. We've seen smaller guards. It takes a while for them to get acclimated to the league. So, whenever it does happen, I do think Reed will be valuable. But I don't know how long the Rockets wait for that to happen. But I do think Reed is a perfect piece for this team offensively if he can get right defensively.
Yeah, I got alpha issues with Jalen. I just don't think he is an alpha and doesn't act like that. And Reed Sheppard, it's the same thing. He was a backup with Kentucky. He was second guy on the bench, not somebody that takes control. And since he's been with the Rockets, it just didn't seem like he's that guy that wants to be the guy. And he needs to be the guy if he's going to be out there, because you are the point guard. You are the guy that we want to see taking a lot of shots with his range and stuff. But I'm not seeing it, and that'll lead me right into the offensive issues. And I want to talk Udoka and Jalen in a second. But before we roll on, just a quick reminder that even though the Rockets season is over, the NBA playoffs are still your chance to score big. Every three-pointer and buzzer beater, an opportunity to win at MyBookie. Place your bets live as the action unfolds at MyBookie. Are you feeling confident? Lock in your winnings early with our quick cash out option. Never miss a chance to turn your basketball knowledge into real cash. And hey, are you new to MyBookie? Sign up today with promo code MM50. Look in the description for that and instantly boost your first deposit. If you deposit $50, MyBookie tosses in $25 extra. If you deposit $100, you get an extra $50. More action, more excitement, more chances to win during basketball's intense playoff season. Plus, when the games wrap up, keep the winning streak alive at MyBookie's casino with slots, blackjack, roulette, and more. The thrills never stop. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. All right, Bradeaux, the buzz this season has been, what will we learn about the Rockets players from the playoffs? But nobody asked, what will we learn about Udoka from the playoffs? And not sure I learned anything because I just got reinforced for my contention that Bradeaux, he either adds an offensive mind to this staff this summer or next year, fans won't be talking about his ceiling like a championship coach. They'll be calling him maybe a slightly better Tom Thibodeau, which is kind of what I see right now. He's a slightly better Tom Thibodeau because of his offensive limitations.
For me personally, it's really a bunch of the roster limitations. He didn't make a ton of adjustments offensively, but it's just the roster is just, again, it's a good young team. They won 52 games, but man, like there's no spacing in game 7. Robert, how many threes did they make? 3? They took 18 threes? Like, it's 2025. You're not winning any games.
You just said, how many threes did they take? You know, that's the issue, is that, you know, they're not being guarded at 3, but you still can find ways to shoot threes that are decent threes with the players that they have on the roster. They have guys that aren't terrible shooters. VanVleet obviously has shot the ball from 3 really well in this series. Dillon Brooks has shot the ball from 3 all well this season. Jabari Smith, and we're going to get to that, shot the ball incredible in this series. Like, how can you not get more than 18 threes? That's part of the problem. And in game 7, we saw Steven Adams throw up a 10-foot hook shot. That cannot be something that you're doing offensively at that point. VanVleet and Jalen would dribble away the clock for 15 seconds. We saw it take forever the Rockets to even get into a coherent offense at times. Not sure if you remember this, Bradeaux, but the ugliest moment for me was after what feels like a 5-minute break that you typically have between the quarters, between the third and fourth quarter. The Rockets' first play is Ahmed dribbling to the top of the circle, 3 guys standing around looking lost for 15 seconds, out of a 5-minute timeout, not moving above the circle. Then Jalen passes it in the post to Sengun, 18 feet from the basket with 5 seconds on the clock, and Draymond guarding him. This is the best you can do 90 games into a season that you're in game 7 of the playoffs, Bradeaux. This is my problem with this. Is he's got to be able to coach these guys better to do that. We know what he does defensively, but that can't happen.
I'm with you, and I won't excuse it. And there were possessions where you probably mentioned it. Fred was at the top of the key, dribble. He throws up like a floater. It's like, what are we doing out here? So I won't excuse anything. I would not mind an offensive coach coming in, but I do know this team that they need some help offensively for sure. And they don't have a go-to half-court scorer, and that solves all their issues. They just need a go-to half-court guy. And
but if the go-to guy is Kevin Durant, okay, you give the ball to Kevin Durant. Now what happens? Okay, everybody goes, well, that's the guy that we got to stop. So they double Kevin Durant, just like they double Jalen Green. Then what happens? If it's just give the ball to Kevin Durant, like it's give the ball to Jalen Green 25, 30 feet away from the basket, what do you do after that? Because to me, I keep making this, and it's like putting lipstick on a pig. Like he had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with the Boston Celtics against Golden State, and they were having issues offensively, even with those 2 guys, 2 all-stars, 1 MVP caliber guy. So like, I don't know. I don't see it as the fix everything. It's not going to work the way he does offense for 4 rounds in the playoffs.
The main issues I see is, I mean, Jalen's supposed to be this guy, right? He's supposed to be creating rim pressure, and that opens up a ton. And when Jalen doesn't have it going, Fred is not the guy who's going to be creating rim pressure. He's your ball handler. And I think Fred did a good job in this series, and especially game 6. He was picking apart Golden State's defense. One of the better facilitating games I've seen him play. But ideally, again, that's not the guy you want slicing and dicing a defense to get your open looks. And again, they run a very slow pace offense, get into the sets extremely slow. And it is frustrating. Again, you call a timeout and you get into a set, you get to Sengun against a DPOY finalist, and he's settling for a post fade in the corner that he airballs. That's not the set. There's a million times I said this in a series. That's not the play. That's not the play. We have to get something else. So I 100% understand what you're saying. You want some offensive guy to come in to help Ime, and I wouldn't mind that. I would not mind that. But at the same time, too, this team does need help offensively. They are a young team. They can improve, but they could also throw out some better personnel. As you mentioned, we'll probably talk about Jabari later in this episode. You're not making any threes. Throw out your shooters like Jabari, who had a great series. Even Draymond alluded to it. Hey, this dude was a pro the entire series. And I'm looking like, man, this dude played 12 minutes in Game 7. It doesn't make any sense to me. So there are some changes. There are changes that need to be made offensively, because defense is far from the issue with this team.
Yeah, two things can be correct at the same time. They need some more offensive weapons, but they also need a ton better coaching. And the guys at times just didn't look like they knew where to be, where defensively, the Rockets, they're everywhere that you need them to be. They're everywhere defensively. They did a pretty fantastic job against Steph Curry, one of the greatest shooters that ever lived, but they have issues offensively, and that's got to be fixed. And you mentioned Jabari. Let's get to him. Averaging 20 minutes in this series, even though he shot 50% from the field, led the Rockets shooting 45% from three. Just like they've done for most of 3 seasons, they run no plays for Jabari Smith. He's in with double bigs and never gets a pin down or gets run off a screen. Maybe once, Bradeaux, they did try him in the post, but that was it in a 7-game series where you couldn't score. And, Draymond's got Sengun locked up. So who's going to guard Jabari? Who's going to stop Jabari? I don't get it.
I'm totally with you. And Jabari had the mid-range on the entire series. He gets to the little short corner or to the elbow, and it was cash. I wouldn't have minded them going to that more. And more times than not, he had a small guard on him. He had mismatches for most of the series. I've seen Steph on him, GP2. Those are guys he can take advantage of in a mismatch situation. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have the stat sheet up, but he didn't take any more than 5 shots in any of those games. And he was efficient outside of that Game 7, which I'm not even mad at. I really do wish that he had more looks, and especially from 3 in a game where you're struggling like that. I just knew Ime was going to be playing him in that fourth quarter, and in an extended stretch, and he did it. So yeah, they have offensive talent, and Jabari, yes, he has to improve on some things like his ball security and all those things. Dribble, handle needs to be a little tighter. But I think he can be a guy you can go to in the post, not consistently to be a go-to guy or even a number 2 guy, but as an option when you're getting Sengun locked up and there's nothing else you can get going. Yeah, I'd go to Jabari in the post. He was hitting it, and he was over 50% this year on those turnaround fades. So I'm with you.
He averaged 4.9 shots per game. I remember there was one game, I want to say it might have been Game 3, where he put up 8 shots. But yeah, averaging 5 shots for Jabari Smith. We talked about it, 20 minutes. And look, I understand Udoka didn't like Jabari on defense in this series. Surprisingly, Jalen's D was better because you have a lot of chase action. You got a lot of screen navigation with Steph, but Jabari's D doesn't look as bad, I guess, if he's putting the ball in the basket. It's like, oh yeah, Jabari, he looks like, Udoka's going, oh, he's terrible out there because he's not doing it on defense. But yeah, if he's putting the ball in the basket, then it's not such a bad deal, because you needed somebody that could put the ball in the basket. And I don't understand why one guy is the 3rd guy in the draft and we give no run to him as a weapon, and the other guy is the 2nd guy in the draft. And it's like we're designing our entire, whether this lives or dies, on Jalen Green. They're both like top 3 picks, aren't they?
They are. I look at Jabari and his role. It's just he's not necessarily a go-to scorer per se, but I really do wish he got more looks. And I hate that he got injured, because this is a completely different conversation. If he never gets injured, Robert, they don't even take him out the starting lineup. I really don't think so. Do you think they take him out if he doesn't get injured?
No, I don't think they do. I don't know what changes though, because it felt like Amen was coming for somebody's job. And
He was.
it just seems like, the trust and the love for Dillon Brooks was not going to help Ahmed get into the starting lineup. So, I would love to see the alternate universe where that happened.
Yeah. But again, ideally, I'd like to see Barr used a little more. I really like that short turnaround fade that he has. Yeah, when he gets to his spots, he can hit those for sure. The three ball, it was hidden in the playoffs. It does need to be a little bit more consistent in the regular season, around 35%. But I mean, the kid's 21, turns 22 in actually a few days. So I mean, he's got so much potential, man. I hope they use him more in the future if he stays. And that's another thing we probably need to talk about. That extension is up for him, and I would resign him.
No doubt about it. Maybe they were just trying not to play him so they could keep the extension money down. I don't know. It was so odd. And the other thing about Jabari, I just thought we would see a different use of Jabari when Udoka took over, because that was a frustration that I had with Silas as well. It just like the organization, for whatever reason, doesn't want to put some work into getting Jabari the basketball more. And I know there's some issues, his dribbling is obviously one of them, but I think you can get him the ball in spots where he doesn't have to dribble but a couple of times, if at all. And if it's not there, then you try something else. And, everybody's like, well, one of the problems is he's not a good passer. And I was like, okay, he's a bad passer. How does he get better when you only pass him the ball at the end of the shot clock? And then what are his options? You can't become a good passer if you never have the ball in your hands. That's part of the problem. But let's get to Jalen, because I put it off long enough. And in 5 of the 7 games, he made 3 field goals, made 4 in another game. That's it. In 3 of the last 4 games, he only shot 8 times. Now, keep in mind, he led the team in shots per game this season. Led the team, and he shot 8 times in 3 of the last 4 games. Not only was he terrible, he looked scared to death out there, Bradeaux. He shot 37%, 29.5% from 3. What do you do with him?
If you want to move him, I don't see the trade that's there. And I'll say this: he did not play a good series. The defense was pretty impressive. He had a few lapses here and there, but for the most part, defense was good. I'll give him that. But he successfully allowed Golden State to just take him out of the game. They game planned him very well, and he just was. It seemed like he was content with it. He wasn't aggressive as he should have been. They had a weak POA on him, and when he drove, they had a wall kind of come forth to him, and that was that. He wasn't attacking outside of that. And again, 6 of the 7 games, he had like 11 or less points, and that's unacceptable. I do hold a lot of these guys to a high standard. I like, every young guy on this team. Like Jalen, he's better than that, and he just didn't perform. So it's just unacceptable performance. So what do you do with him? I could see them running it back with Jalen. Again, I don't see the ideal star trade. The entire outlook was, okay, we could flip Jalen for Devin Booker. But again, the Suns don't even want to do that. So that's not an option. And outside of that, the other, star trade everyone is talking about is like a Giannis. And even then, I don't see that necessarily happening, because if you make a Giannis trade and you trade in Jalen and a few other pieces, I don't necessarily like the spacing with Amin, Sengun, and Giannis. I mean, you getting a bulldozer like Giannis to come in with 2 other people who don't space the floor, not the best. It's not ideal. So I've talked to a bunch of people about this. If you're going to trade Jalen, some people have mentioned almost like a Caruso Giddey kind of trade. I'm not comparing Jalen Green to Giddey. Don't think of it like that, but just an efficient, role player who's really good at what he does. And you just swap that for a Jalen and get some impact out of the position. That's the idea with that kind of move. But, I mean, that's probably the only thing I can think of if you're going to move Jalen this offseason. But ideally, if I were to ever move him, I don't want to do it for a star, and it just needs to make sense. So I personally don't know what they do with him. I could see them running it back. Again, they'd have a good season if they did run it back. They just won 52. I'm sure they could increase that to 55, 57. But I'd like to see him become a lot more mentally tough. Last thing I'll say on this note, Draymond came talking about you paint your nails, this and that, and they're talking crazy. And he came back the next game with like 7 points. Like, you got to be mentally you got to come back that next game with at least 20. But that's just me, man. He's better than that in my personal opinion, and I just think he needs to be more mentally tough.
The hard part with him is just, you try to deal him now, and you're almost having to add in assets in a Jalen deal to get another team to take Jalen, because, he's going to be making $30-something million for 2 years, and then Jalen's got the 3rd-year option. And if Jalen doesn't get any better, nobody's going to be giving him $30-something million, in a year in a new contract. So yeah, that's the complication with this whole thing. I mean, does Milwaukee want to, be stuck with Jalen's contract for the next 3 years while they're doing what they need to do to rebuild? And, I don't see, Phoenix wanting that. They don't want to rebuild anyway. So I don't know what you do. I mean, you could get him to a third team. Is there a third team out there that would be interested in him? That's another question. But I'll get to our other big star going into this series anyway, and that's Sengun. It's his first playoff series. I thought he was great defensively in a matchup that you couldn't even imagine him handling just 1 year ago. I mean, it would have been crazy. Like, Sengun's going to be able to handle running around on the perimeter for a 7-game series, and you're not going to get burned with him doing that. On offense, though, it's just okay, not nearly good enough. All his awards came out: poor finishing around the basket, average mid-range game, bad free throw shooter, all of that stuff we knew going in. I mean, I just thought, also, just as a side note, everybody thought, oh, we're going to see whatever all these guys look like in a playoff situation. None of this is a shock to me because we've had playoff situations in this regular season. They had it in the NBA Cup. They had it in some of these better matchups. There's nothing that really surprised me. Even the Jalen stuff did not surprise me anyway. But unlike Jalen, Sengun, his main defender was an all-time NBA legendary defender, Bradeaux, and the worst possible matchup for Sengun's offensive game. So, Bradeaux, his series is put in a specific context that I don't think Jalen's gets that context because he didn't go against Draymond.
Yeah, I'll say this about Sengun. From game one, I saw a kind of a dog in him, and I liked from the tip. He was going to go get it, and I like that about him. The defense was amazing this series from Sengun, 20, 10, and 5. A little stat, Jokic is the only other center to put up 20, 10, and 5 in his first playoff series outside of Sengun. So great on him there. He looks like he's ready, and I think he's going to be ready for any postseason series. But yes, the efficiency, 49.1 true shooting percentage is obviously terrible for a center. And it's obviously tough going against, as you mentioned, an all-time great defender in Draymond. And anyone who's watched Sengun throughout the years knows he struggles more so with the shorter, stockier guys, more so than the centers. You see Sengun against Rudy Gobert. He's putting him under the rim, and he's getting buckets. He averaged 25, 11, and 5 against Rudy Gobert this year. But yeah, when it comes to those shorter, stockier guys, Sengun struggles for sure. And he did struggle against Draymond. But even then, I like that he was able to get his shots up. And again, Golden State game plan, hey, you're going to take Draymond one-on-one and see what you can do. But I did like what I saw for the most part with Sengun. He just cannot miss those bunnies. First 3 years in the league, he's around 60 true shooting percentage. That's the kind of player he is. But this year, he was 54.7, true shooting percentage. It's got to be better. I think it will be better. He improved the defense, which is much more important because he's playable in a playoff series. And the worry with him this whole time was he's going to get played off the floor in the playoffs. He cannot defend a pick and roll. What are we going to do with him? But man, the way he was scrambling out there, Robert, I don't know if you saw it. It was extremely impressive. So this is a guy you can have long-term, anchoring a really good defense. The Rockets' top 5 defense this year. And Sengun looks like a big part of that. I was very impressed with him defensively. But yeah, not worried about him offensively. I think he'll lock in this summer. He said in his post-game presser he was disappointed in his offensive abilities. He's going to lock in on his touch this year. So I'm excited to see how he comes back. We'll see a taste of it in Eurobasket come August.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned, the 20, 10, and 5. Somebody had to shoot for the Rockets because he got 20 points, and he did it inefficiently. I'm not as much impressed with that, but he knows what's wrong because he was quoted afterwards as saying, I was better last year. I was struggling with offense, but I'm just going to focus on that, on my body, on my touch, everything. A long summer is waiting for me, so I have a lot to do. So the one thing about Sengun, with him, I just feel like a lot of his quotes and a lot of what he says after games, Bradeaux, it's kind of where I separated also on Jalen and Sengun as players over the last 3 or 4 years. Sengun seems to be aware of where the issues are. You get the feeling like he gets it. And that's where my concern sometimes with Jalen. Like, he had that, deal in the middle of this series where he's calling out Draymond for not doing anything. I'm like, Draymond has 4 championships, dude. What have you done? You can't do that.
And that's the same thing I was saying when, him and Dre get into it. You say something like that to Draymond, you come out with 7 points. You can't do that. You gotta come out and go get it, man. Like, I know he's not Anthony Edwards, but a guy like Ant, he'll go out there, talk some noise, and give you 25, 30 and back it up. I want to see that from Jalen. He's that talented. It's not translating to the court.
I'm in, I might say, for another day, but we saw again. I just figured he would, when the lights got brightest, he would start to play well. And even though he struggled early, he really looked fantastic as the series went along. It just sucks that he got hurt in Game 7. Rockets just with some bad lucks with Gary Payton getting ill, and then Ahmed getting hurt. You just wonder how that entire game looks different. Of course, Golden State, they get sort of breaks and stuff like that when they face the Rockets. See Chris Paul injury 2017, for example. And the Rockets fans, I want to say, okay, they have a Game 7 at Toyota Center. I believe the Rockets fan base and social media is about as passionate as it gets. But Stan Van Gundy said something, Bradeaux, during the broadcast that I agree with. He said, quote, "This is about as quiet an arena for a Game 7 as he's seen since about halfway through the second quarter." Van Gundy then said, "This has not been a tough place for Golden State to play," unquote. And frankly, this is the frustration I see with Houston sports fans in general. We see this with the Astros, even the Texans at times. In biggest games, our fans don't cheer unless we're doing something great out there. Bradeaux, fans have no idea how they can affect the team when they're struggling, and it's a Game 7.
I agree. I went to Game 1. I'd like to see the fans a little more into it. And you always say, the fans need something to cheer for. I definitely get that. But I would like to see this Houston, fan base get a lot more into the games. Some people are too cool to wear the red shirts, and just throw on the shirt and cheer for this team. It's pretty simple to do. Look at any OKC game. Everyone's wearing that white shirt or orange shirt, and they're getting into it. I think to the old Oracle team, the Oracle Center, the Warriors, they're down maybe 10, 15. They just start cheering. Get the team back into it. Things like that. I 100% agree, and that goes for a lot of Houston sports teams. So, yeah, love the city, but I'd like to see the fans get a little more into it and not be too cool to participate and cheering for this team.
Yeah, I don't know if it's too cool. It seems like they need inspiration, and it's like, no. You are the ones that need to provide the inspiration for the team, not vice versa. That's your job for home court advantage in the playoffs, and that's got to change. I want to ask you in just a second, like just some final thoughts that you have about either this series or this season. But I'm just going to finish with this, and I can't think of a season. I really can't think of a season I'm more sad to see end unless I go back to the Clutch City years. It's the most fun season you can have as a sports fan because, number one, you blew away expectations. Number two, you have 7 exciting young players to watch develop as the season goes along. Number three, you beat every playoff team at least once, including 3 wins in 6 days versus the 2 best Eastern Conference teams. Number four, we fell in love. You fall in love with the Grizzly Bear, Steven Adams. I mean, come on. That made it fun. You get the privilege of watching Amen bloom into a nightly freak show. And I feel like we're going to start thinking this is normal next year. But this year, you see it, and it's like seeing it for the first time. It's like you got a new baby or something like that. Oh, look, did you see what the new baby did? And Bradeaux, this season did not end because a 7 seed beat a 2 seed. It ended because the Rockets lost to a team with just 4 fewer losses and had added one of the most clutch postseason players ever during the season to a team with Steph, Draymond, and 4 championship rings. Right. So, this was not a 2 losing to a 7. Let's take that and throw it in the trash can if you're thinking about that. Any final thoughts for you, Bradeaux, about either the series or the season?
I agree with you. It was a very fun season, one of the most fun seasons I've had supporting this Rockets team. I look at it, yes, they lost in the first round, but this is the youngest Rockets team to ever win 50 games, average age of 25.2 with that rotation. So them getting there was impressive. A lot of people didn't have them making the play-in. So it was a great year. Again, a lot of these young guys blossomed. Amin, outstanding as a starter this year. Sengun, again, his defensive leap. A ton of young guys, a ton of potential, a ton of promise. This is far from, the end for them. You think of a Kings team who, they shot up to the 3rd seed, ended up losing to Golden State. I don't see this being a situation like them either because they didn't make it back. This Rockets team is here to stay. They have a really good defensive identity, and that'll take you a long way. Great rebounding team, and these young guys are only going to get better each season. So Yeah, Robert and I, we talked about, yes, they probably need to do something this offseason, need some changes, but there is so much promise with this team, and they're going to be fine regardless what they do. And Rafael Stone, most importantly, has done an amazing job, in my personal opinion, as the GM, as the Houston Rockets. And I trust whatever decision that he's going to make going forward. So we'll see what happens, but they're only going to get better, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what the future holds, but really good season for the most part.
Yeah, big decisions this offseason. It's going to get interesting. Steven Adams, I've said it before, like that's priority number one. He might be the most important guy that they've got to figure out what to do. And he's worth to me like in the 20 somethings now, as far as like his impact on the Rockets, and just love that guy. Also want to point out, Steph Curry said, quote, "That's one of the toughest defenses I've ever faced." Draymond said the Rockets were, quote, "tough as hell. They earned a lot of respect from me, a bunch." You go through a playoff series against somebody, one of two things happens. You completely lose respect for them or gain a lot of respect. And Draymond said, "I gained a ton of respect." Draymond actually threw in a couple more expletives in there for emphasis. But he got the point across. Say what you want about Draymond and Steph, but they don't throw around compliments like that too often. So just can't say enough about what this team brought. And I listened to about a billion NBA national podcasts, and everybody to a man was just talking about how impressed they were with what the Rockets did to Steph Curry and what they did to Golden State. And just, they did not blame this on anything except the Rockets need, they need somebody at the end of games, and they need that guy, that heliocentric guy, that guy that can get you some buckets. But he's at Bradeaux NBA. It's the Bradeaux and Will Show on YouTube. I'm guessing, just like me, you and Will are not stopping at this point.
No, we're not stopping. I'm actually jumping on right after this to record with Will to talk about this off season in this game. So yeah, if you guys want to tune in with us again, the Bradeaux and Will Show, we'll be on playback as well. Doing similar kind of thing as a Twitter space. If y'all want to tune in there as well, it's the Houston Live Room. But appreciate you again, as always, Robert, for having me on the show. I want to say that's my third time, and I'll have no problem making it a fourth or a fifth time. So just let me know whenever, and I'll gladly come on.
Yeah, I love it. And if you don't know the behind the scenes stuff, which you probably don't, he's on the road right now with work. So for him to do this and take some time with us is just fantastic, and always appreciate it. Love you, man, for coming on, and just can't wait for next year. But I'm sad right now.
I'm with you, man. But we'll be back. It'll be better. It's going to be worth it.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.